my generation, the youth, who are going to lead the way in this movement. Because we are going to be more affected than anyone else by the consequences of global warming. So we have the authority, responsibility, and power to demand that our leaders make decisions that benefit our future. Because there comes a time in every generation where the need for change is thrust upon them. A time when civilization redefines itself to create a new way of living. Because the people have found that the old ways no longer bring life, hope, and happiness. And over 200 years ago, Thomas Jefferson said, "Every generation needs a new revolution." The revolution for his generation resulted in the birth of a new nation, free from the laws of a foreign government that valued its own short-term interests more than the well-being of the people. But the time for a new revolution has come. The need for change is now being thrust upon us. And the challenge has fallen upon our generation to create a new green. We as youth are now faced with an amazing opportunity to save the planet for our generation and every generation to follow us. But we can't afford to wait until we're older and have PhDs or done some breakthrough research or become senators or something. We need to be involved now. Because people always say it's great to have kids involved because you guys are the future. And yeah, we are the future. But you know what? We are more than that. We're here now. We are the present, and our voices do make a difference. So let's now work together to change the world, and not just occupy it. Thank you.
Becoming a climate-conscious consumer. And what does that mean? Thinking about the embedded climate energy cost in every single thing that we buy. That's going to take some time. Every store that you go into, trying to get information on what they're using, what the life cycle analysis is of the products, whether or not they've done anything to reduce their greenhouse gas footprint. I can tell you Timberland just brought theirs down by 19%. Asking the clerk as you go out, reading the brochures that Starbucks puts, asking them about fair trade and about coffee and about peak coffee. Because once the weather conditions change, we're not going to be able to grow coffee in the regions that we are now. Really engaging as you are purchasing. If it feels lonely, changing light bulbs, saving water, recycling your newspapers, working on this, and you feel like you should be saving children in Africa like my nephew is instead, if you're working on climate change, you are saving people in Africa, and it's all bound together. David Hawkins gave a graduation speech you may have heard at the University of Portland. And there's one message here for the young people in the room. And he said that it was written in code on the back of the diplomas. And I think it's worth reading. It's very brief. It says, "You are brilliant, and the earth is hiring. The earth couldn't afford to send recruiters or limos to your school. It sent you rain, sunsets, ripe cherries, night-blooming jasmine, and that unbelievably cute person you were dating. Take the hint, and here's the deal. Forget that this task of planet saving is not possible in the time required. Don't be put off by people who know what is not possible. Do what needs to be done, and check to see if it was impossible, only after you are done." I come to things like this, and I see Paul's video, and I hear Alec, who actually met you in Nashville. And I say, I'm not worried. Those folks are right in this room. The next Rachel Carson is here. The next Al Gore is here. So thank you.
One of the things I'm going to do is introduce you in some kind of backwards way to a concept called permaculture. And it's basically derived from permanent agriculture and then permanent culture. And one of the aspects of that is what we call stacking functions, which is any element you put into a system, any element you put into a design, should have multiple benefits, not just one. We should not be solely concentrating on carbon. The reason that that's a potential problem is if we do that, we may turn around and create other problems in other areas in an attempt to try to solve the carbon problem.
Raising livestock contributes more to climate change than transportation. Just raising livestock than the entire global transportation system. This came out of the United Nations recently. We produce somewhere around 600 million to 1 billion tons of waste per year, creating air and water pollution. Large amounts of water, fertilizer, and biocides needed to produce the feed. A fifth of U.S. oil consumption goes to production and transport of the food. 70% of our U.S. corn crop goes to feeding livestock, and it's highly subsidized, which is why you can get a 99-cent burger at a McDonald's. That's not the true cost of a hamburger. You're paying for it in your taxes and in your health care. Livestock production now uses 30% of the entire global land surface. Some estimates are that 16,000 liters of water are required to produce a kilogram of meat, 35 gallons of oil to raise a calf to slaughter. We have to look at other places where energy and climate change occur. So any energy strategy must account for water, food, and peace. Nuclear requires substantial water for cooling, and the technology contributes to weapons proliferation. We can't ignore that. You can't just look at carbon and say nuclear is an answer without addressing the nuclear waste, without addressing weapons proliferation, without addressing the need for water. Drought is going to decrease hydroelectric power production. Dams can damage habitat. We have to acknowledge that if we're going to look at hydroelectric systems. Solar panels currently also require a lot of water, so we have to look at the production of that and see if there's a way to decrease it. Biofuels, we've talked a lot about biofuels, but they use a huge amount of water currently the way they're being grown. And currently they take acreage away from food, this whole food for fuel system. We have to look more broadly than just at carbon in one particular area. Some criteria we should have for this. Any strategy should have to improve multiple factors in the areas of habitat, biodiversity loss, water supply and quality, soil erosion, fertility, air pollution, social equity, and peace. Now, if an energy supply can do that, if a strategy can do that, then that's a good strategy. If it can't, move on to something else. Don't invest a huge amount of money in infrastructure into something that's a short-term solution, because we already know if it establishes itself as the status quo, then it's going to be really hard to get back out of it again. So investing hugely into nuclear only to turn around later on and go, yeah, that Yucca Mountain thing didn't really turn out too well, and we've got hundreds of millions of tons of nuclear waste sitting around the country, then all we've done is put ourselves in another disaster situation, another crisis. One of the single greatest things you can do in your day to decrease climate change is actually just eat less red meat. I mean, that right there.
Efficiency is one of the best ways to solve this problem and one of the biggest gainers. So what I'd like to do today is talk about some of the solutions we're working on and others are working on. And some of them are sort of far out things that we can look for in the future, and some of the things that are available today that can be used. So our focus is to look for solutions to global warming. We 100% agree with Adam, looking for solutions that are not based on nuclear and not based on fossil fuels. And then combining that with basically reducing the emissions. We've heard this morning, we're all aware, the United States is one of the worst offenders. The Institute is organized in sort of 6 areas that we're focused on. Talk about 3 of these. We'll talk about lighting, basically. Talk about buildings. We've just heard about that. I'll talk about production. So, obviously, incandescent lights are inefficient, and there's a big push to put compact fluorescence in, which is good. It's about 3 times more efficient than incandescent light bulbs. But LEDs are obviously much better. And today, LEDs are around this number. Lumens per watt, we can ignore, sort of put it relative to incandescent light bulbs. Today, we're about 12 times better than incandescent. We're working actually very close to Calera now. There's probably 5 professors and about 5 grad students working at Calera. And their focus is basically to take CO2 out of power plants and make green building material. And this is pretty
There's in fact 64,000 tons of waste produced in Hollywood alone. And the movie industry is bigger than just Hollywood, so imagine the amount of waste produced all over the world in terms of film solutions. To kind of leave you with four ways to integrate solutions into your life and into your organization. There's the technical solutions that we saw today in terms of the panels and the technologies that are available to us. There's the behavioral solutions, getting people to recycle, saying, hey, can you compost? Choosing alternatives, making the right choices in our life. There's the systemic, looking at industry-wide changes. Because all of our industries, as we saw in other presentations, they're all, and I encourage young people out there to ask your grandparents about what they did. And for the older members of our audience to ask your children and your grandchildren what they would like to see, what they need help with, what they would like to learn from you. Because so much of the solutions we have, they're just being lost in the generation gaps that are.
Look for ways to decrease that energy demand and energy use to make them even that much better. So.